This is the Compass Podcast, where we disrupt the everyday with a glimpse of the divine. My name is Michelle Maldonado.
And I'm Ryan Dunn.
Ryan, what do we have in store for this episode?
Well, April is an environmentally focused month. So we have Earth Day later this month. There's this faith-based Climate Action Week in April. Actually, I think that's April 14th through 23rd to be more exact. It's a little more than a week, but we're calling it a week anyway. And April is also like the realization of spring as well. So we're just a little bit more in tune with the out of doors during this season. So in this episode, we'll focus on the ties between our spirituality and caring for the environment. And our guest is the Reverend Richenda Fairhurst. She gives us a lot of ideas for taking action in relation to climate action and environmental care. And just so you know a little bit about Richenda, she is a mentor and speaker for the Climate Action Network and the Center for Earth Ethics. She's acted as a chaplain for Occupy Wall Street and at Standing Rock. And she founded Faiths for Future in 2020 and serves as a co-organizer for Faiths for Future and the Climate Café Multifaith.
I'm really looking forward to sharing this conversation with Reverend Richenda Fairhurst.
Reverend Richenda Fairhurst, first of all, thank you so much for joining us on the Compass Podcast. And second of all, how goes it with your soul today?
Well, I'm actually feeling a lot of joy because I have had one of these seasonal sicknesses and beginning to feel better and remembering how much I enjoy entering into life when I'm not feeling sorry for myself with cough drops. So I am doing pretty darn well today. And so, yeah, it's good to be here. It's good to be having conversations and real conversations. Really sharing. So I plan to really share today, and I hope folks there listening, hear themselves somehow and feel that pull, that spiritual pull in their own lives, because I sure feel it in mine.
Well, good. Well, we do want to hear some of your story today, particularly around some of the climate work that you've gotten involved in and things like Faiths for Future. What is Faiths for Future, and how did you start up with that? How'd you get it rolling?
So yeah, I actually had started a little bit of the sort of creation justice work I do while I was surveying in southwestern Washington. And then I was reappointed into Southern Oregon and put together a training for faith folks here. And then realized that, God was calling me to talk about creation justice more widely. And when you serve a parish, there's so much you have to do. And really, really love serving a parish. So don't get me wrong. It was really hard to leave, in fact. But the opportunity opened in front of me to do what I was really called to do. And that was to address climate justice, to work at that intersection. So what I did was I kind of traveled in Oregon and Washington to see, is there an interest in having someone come to person's church or community and talk about climate resilience, climate adaptation, all the things. And it seemed like there was interest. And then the pandemic hit. So I formed a nonprofit called Circle Faith Future in December of 2019. And then, of course, had to cancel engagements. And I had to rethink, well, this call is still on my life. I'm still called to do this work. What am I going to do now? And I had been trained with the Climate Reality Project. I had taken 2 ministers training, one at Union Seminary and one at Methodist Theological School in Ohio. And those trainings were just absolutely fantastic. And there were colleagues out of that and trainings out of that. And I just reached out to people, the colleagues from those trainings and beyond. Are you interested in still doing this work? And if so, let's get a group together. Let's get a band together. What we did is we went virtual, and Faiths for Future is a virtual platform. And, we had the Zoom account, like many people do. And what we did is we thought, okay, now we're together. What do we do? And it was, we reached out towards a woman, her name is Jess Pepper, and she lives in Scotland. And she came up with the Climate Café idea. And I had bumped into her in some prep work for the upcoming COP26. And I just loved the concept. It's very Wesley. You sit in a circle together. You're just a human together. And we talk about things that are hard to talk about. We form relationships. You find support there. And so the Climate Café Multifaith sport, and it's all online. And we get people from like every state and like 16 different countries. So there's a need for this. But it's like kind of this. It's this lovely little platform, and speakers come. We recently had David Herring from NOAA come. We've got a conversation about Ramadan coming up. We've talked about ecocide. Anyway, that's kind of what happened there. And we have lovely support from Climate Reality Project's Climate Speakers Network and supporting the project as well. And Rachel Scott, who shows up in our space. And it's just a really good way to have a conversation with people, especially if you're somewhere where you might feel a little lonely in the work. Here you have this group of colleagues, and we're willing to talk about it. We're really ready, willing, rolling up our sleeves to talk about it.
What was that, I'd say, divine aha moment of inspiration when you felt that this was definitely the pull towards the climate change topic?
This is kind of like a two-parter, because I have this undergirded love of the creation. So when I was a little kid, we lived in the suburbs, but we lived in like the last street, and behind us was forest. Ooh. It was forest, and it was the Ottawa River. And so I literally, we joke about Gen X kids, running loose, but I wasn't fully loose. I was wild range loose. Gen X are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, running through this forest by myself, with the turtles and the foxes and the birds and the frogs, pulling frogs out of that scummy frog pond. Believe me, when you're 8, you don't care that the pond is covered with green scum. That's a bonus, actually. Although it makes it slipperier to keep hold of that frog. And I used to stick my pockets full of garter snakes. There was this place I called Snake Cove. Every rock you turn over was full of garter snakes, and they were the best. And they give you the beady eye, that stink eye, as they try to get away. And I used to jump on top of beaver dams. The beavers hate that, by the way, but I thought it was hilarious. And they come out from underneath into their little pools, and they look at you with their little nostrils sticking out of water. And then if you're lucky, they get so mad at you, they smack the water with their tail. That's a good day.
Was that the goal?
Make you trouble. Yeah. So I basically terrorized the local woodland, but it actually gave me such joy. I learned how richly alive the world was. You couldn't move a stick. You couldn't unturn a leaf. And there was the Ottawa River, right? This huge, beautiful river, and it had all sorts of bracken, and it wasn't manicured. It was wild. And you had to kind of be small, I guess, to get under and through. And I absolutely loved it. And that kind of, when you're a kid, you think everybody gets that. And what I learned as an adult is very few people get that. And it taught me how alive the woods are, taught me how beloved the creation was, taught me what an afterthought it was, right? The forest didn't need me, but boy, did I love the forest. And to have been blessed, to be created, to be part of this life, like everlasting life. When we talk about life in Jesus Christ, when we're talking about life and the creation, the hope of God, the filling of the Spirit, we have no idea what we're talking about if we've never walked through a forest. Because you feel that aliveness everywhere, where the breath of God is, everywhere. In fact, think about it this way. Our atmosphere is where the breath of God is, right? And guess what we're putting in there, right? Fossil fuel pollution, plastics. It rains plastics. As people of faith, this should never, ever even cross our mind as something that's possible, that we should throw past plastics up into the domain of the Holy Spirit and have it rain down. What? It's nuts. But we did that, and partly because lots of reasons. we can reclaim this, though. We can learn. I'm learning to do better. So this is the part where the whole creation justice and climate came in for me. I was a suburban mom. I raised 3 kids. I stayed home. I used lots of plastic, for example, right? I cared about the creation, but I didn't know how bad it was until I went to that first training at Union Seminary. And at that training, it was a minister's training, 35 ministers. It was a week. And I learned the truth with colleagues standing next to me. Thank goodness I wasn't alone. But that second day, I went into the chapel that night. I couldn't sleep. I went into the chapel and I did this wailing, keening prayer. I was so deeply aggrieved. I'm just like, grief. So you have to kind of move through that. It's part of the work I do. Yes, we're going to have to feel that, but that's not the end. We have our faith. We have our hope and our light. Jesus moved through dark times. This is nothing. We got this. We just have to do it together. Reach out for each other. So on the flight home, I'm, flying. That's okay. We're getting there. And then looking out over the clouds, and that's actually where I got my call to ministry. And this time it was like this second call, a call within a call, where it was like, I knew the work of my life would be to do this. And I hoped that everybody would just find it really annoying, because our effort would change things soon enough that would leave most of the people going, well, why'd you have to do that in the first place? Sadly, that's not what's happening. We're going to need a little bit more negative reinforcement before we get going. But we need to be in prayer over that. I mean to joke about that, but the truth is people are hurting from climate change, and animals and the earth and the forests, and that we need to be in prayer around that, uplifting that into the hope that we feel and we live into.
So you went to the training, and Al Gore inconvenienced you with some deep truths.
Yes, Al Gore was there. Oh my goodness. Deep in my soul, the Baptist presentation of this faith-filled slideshow, at sort of truth-telling.
Were there some actions that you took right away in response? Was it like, you stopped all consumption of certain goods, or what were some examples of some things that you got up to?
So I think the first personal step is really personal conviction. So you can go to a march with a bunch of friends. That's not necessarily conviction about what you're doing, knowing that this is a call on your life or a call in place or something deeply like the Spirit moves through your body to pull you through, right? Supporting you, calling you, working through you. So I had been concerned before this, but this is where I became deeply convicted that this is what I had to do. And God has been, God, some people joke that God's such a joker. Gosh, God.
There you go again.
I know. Yep. So, here he puts these calls on my life. I just want to be a hermit, go off and be holy somewhere. Then I'm not contributing. But God gave me a mother and a grandmother. I've been married for 35 years. I live in the midst of life in America. And so anybody who lives in the midst of life in America and tries to be green knows that it's either inaccessible or it's too expensive. You can go off grid and start your own farm, but that's not what I was called to. I'm called to talk to people, be with people, be present with people. And so my conviction is oftentimes just being truthful about how hard it is, and encouraging and speaking out about. So that personal conviction leads next to those times that you're going to take action. So you're going to do something different. You're going to say, well, now I'm really done with straws, or now I'm really done with plastic. I often challenge people with plastic because it's everywhere. I say, spend a week without plastic. And I know they won't succeed. So it's sort of mean, I guess. But the idea is that it helps us think it through and interact physically with our space and realize everything I have is plastic, from my toothbrush to my food saving containers, to the bag that I carry my groceries with, to that sticker on my pear. It's all plastics. And I think that awareness is what will help us plastic companies, by the way, they're planning on doubling their production of plastic. They're not scaling back.
You'd think after all this time, yeah.
No. And the butyryl acrylate that got spilled in East Palestine and on Friday spilled in Bucks County in the river in Philadelphia, where they're told they can't drink the water. That's all plastic. So that forest that I grew up in, right? There was never an intention from the divine to pour plastic all over it. That's just not a thing. So that's the thing is, I think if we can get a hold of that in our life and realize that's a starting place to where hopefully we feel more convicted. But some of us have fled forest fires. I have. Some of us have fled from floods. So there's a lot of people who are encountering this now. Yeah. So that personal conviction leads to personal action, right? And then it leads hopefully to that person wanting to testify and be a witness and be a leader, to share what's on their heart, to share that conviction, and to bring people along, to help make it better, to help restore. We're not just resurrection people, we're restoration people, right? That's deeply. Jesus didn't just pop up again. Jesus came, was resurrected, and then the work began of all the restoration of community and goodness. And, Jesus is Jesus is amazing. We tend to look down on the Bible. What, right? I joke about this. Why are we always looking down at the Bible? We should be looking up at it. Those scriptures tell us so much, and we're really we have so much defenses. We're not really willing to soak that in. But when Jesus says, would a father give their child an egg or a scorpion? Jesus is saying something about what we give our child. Let's say at Easter. So here's my suggestion for Easter. It's gonna be hard. Take some opportunity to do no plastic at Easter. See if you can pull that off. So now I'm choking again because we got to find, there's joy. God is here. We can be joyful. But it's going to be hard. So I'm going to tell you that ahead of time. It's going to be hard, but let's try it. And instead of doing that plastic Easter grass, dye some recycled paper, some pretty colors, shred it. Beautiful, biodegradable. You can put it in your garden afterwards, right? Then use like a regular basket, like a natural fiber basket, or use a brown paper bag, get a couple of them, put them together, cut them so that they're low, have the children decorate them, right? There you go. That also can go in your garden when you're done. It's that okay to do. They give them seeds, give them some little clay pots. Kids love those things. Handmade Play-Doh. There's all sorts of helps actually out there. Now, and then those little plastic toys, why? So those little stuffed animals, those are polyethylene, oftentimes, which is a plastic. So those little fibers, when your kid hugs that plastic and you see those little, if the sun is coming in, you see those little fibers, that's plastic getting loose in the air. That's getting in their lungs, that's getting in their bodies, in their brains, that's getting in our environment. Why would you give your child a poison scorpion instead of an egg? So this is something we have to really think about. What we are giving our children is actually mortgaging, right, their future health, their future lives. Why? So they can have 10 seconds hugging a stuffed bunny made of plastic? No, let's not do that. I feel like I'm talking a million miles a minute, but here's a cool thing we did.
Keep it coming. Yeah, yes. We need it.
So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just egging you on here, preacher. Keep it coming. This is my amen. We are the amen corner.
But yeah, this is egging me on. So egg yourself on Easter, right? Like, because we're eggs. It's a rebirth, right? Don't birth those babies in plastic. Let them be natural. Anyway, so what we did in Camas is. Oftentimes we have homeless ministries in our churches and food bank, clothing banks. So have the congregation, the grown-ups really, right, buy and donate wool and cotton socks. Now, cotton has some problems. We're trying to deal with plastic right now, so let's just focus. So cotton and wool socks in the run-up to Easter. And then in your preparation, you take each pair and you make a little ball out of it. It's like Easter egg sized, right? And then the youth hide those eggs, and the children find them and have the fun of the Easter hunt. And then instead of greedy gutsing ourselves full of candy, we give that Give those socks to the donation and get the joy of loving our neighbor and the teaching of Easter, right?
Yeah.
Easter isn't about eat as much candy as you can. Jesus did not teach that at Easter time. But we live in the suburbs again, right? I wrestle with this. Here I am. I'm not off in some holy hill. I'm just like here doing all the hard things that everyone else has to deal with. So this is a way of saying I'm existing in the world as it is. And this is what I'm going to do to live my faith in an authentic way that brings joy to folks. It's not about austerity of the Puritans. We'll sit in the chair then and do nothing. Oh, my goodness. What child wants that? But getting to pick up all these socks and the joy of them, that, and of giving, just kids love to give. They're natural givers. They're lovely. So anyway, that's my ideas for Easter that we can do different. But try to stay away from plastic. Just try it. I'm going to challenge you.
That's awesome. So for us grown-ups, as we try and evaluate ways that we can challenge ourselves with being more conscientious, what are some more quantitative ways that we can kind of keep track of our improvements in our everyday use of maybe plastics, for example? Because, think about the psychology of it. When we see how much we use, that kind of is the wake-up call. So what are some ways we can quantify that?
Well, just not buying them. So it saves money. And you find that you can wash out a jar and use it to store food. You don't have to buy a, plastic container for that. Let's see, the reward aspect. I think in some ways there can be personal rewards of conviction, but I find that when I'm convicted to do something, oftentimes that's more of like a pull than a good job type of feeling. It's pull me towards something. And I would say that sometimes it feels like defeat because your experience after trying to not have plastic for Easter is to be like, my gosh, how to get to this point where everything has plastic in it. And it might be a little bit of a bummer. And that's why conviction really matters, because what that's going to do is that's going to make you determined. You're going to double down. You're going to start to feel the power of your choices and your voice and your leadership. And then you're going to be able to talk to people, and that's going to help you process. And pretty soon you're going to start feeling stronger rather than defeated by the plastic. You start to feel like what your voice is going to matter. And you can share that with people. You can mentor people, encourage people. If you're young, I just discovered this. So I'm a Gen Xer, but my husband is a boomer. And he actually introduced me to this. It's a little app called Cranky Uncle.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is. It's awesome. So I'm going to give it a shout out. So Cranky Uncle is literally, as you can get it, as an app. And it walks you through disinformation, and the uncle gets crankier and crankier, which is sort of hilarious, right? So, but it offers.
Michelle, I won't be available this afternoon. I'm going to be playing with Cranky Uncle.
Playing with Cranky Uncle, yeah. So great for youth, I would say. 10 and up, even, and your boomers. Get your boomers doing this because there's a lot of older folks who want to do something. I know there's a lot who don't seem to want to. I can't solve the problems that are bigger than me, but I could say, show up with your heart, show up with your joy, show up with your testimony, right? We were gathered together at Pentecost. Pentecost is coming, filled with the Holy Spirit, that we could speak many languages. And those languages today might look a little different than they did then. You might need to try to figure out how to speak, grouchy Latino uncle or a grouchy European a mom. But whatever language you want to speak, your voice matters. Your testimony and your witness matters. And you can pull that conviction right down to the center of you and share about why you care. Share about how the Spirit moves you to this work. Know that the light of God is in front of you, right? I mean, what is it? Jesus went through the dark. We're going to do this in Holy Week. The darkest time. He confronted the scariest stuff that was out there for people of the time. Crucifixion was a terror. It was terrifying. right? And it meant all sorts of terrible things about what could happen to their soul afterwards. So Jesus not only faces crucifixion, think about it, he could have at any moment, this is Jesus we're talking about, put the cross down, walked away like, well, this is hard, I'm not doing this, right? He didn't do that. He stuck it through all the way to the end and actually took on death itself, resurrected through bringing together again the relationships that had been so broken and showing that there is nothing, as Paul says, nothing that can separate us from the love of God. Not crucifixion, not this funny, phony story about how, well, you can't inherit everlasting life if you get crucified. No, none of that is true. The guy crucified behind him says, I will see you. I will see you in heaven. Well, what is heaven? We get this look at it in Revelation. Is very connected with the earth, right? What is there but the waters, the flowing waters, this city that shines by God's light alone, the orchards of trees, right? We do not have to be afraid. This is our trajectory. We can take on that sorrow. We can face the truth. We can say, oh my gosh, I'm just drowning in plastic, and speak up and say, and I don't want to be drowning in plastic, so I'm going to move forward into this lit future, this orchard-filled, clean water future, and that's what I'm investing in. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. No, that's great, because, I mean, that gets inspiring and a sense of urgency when we start talking about, the divine plan for things. It's not to kind of lift everybody up to some alternative plane of existence, right? It is to establish something here in the creation to complete
on
the
earth,
recreation of things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. On earth as it is in heaven. We pray that prayer. Why do we think that we're going to beam out like Star Trek? I don't understand. We're not beaming out. This is, and I don't understand it all. There are, the wisdom handed down, and if you read the Psalms, there's layers to this that I don't know, and I'm not going to concern myself with. I'm not God. I'm going to look up to those scriptures, and I'm going to draw in the Holy Spirit, and I'm going to gather around me groups who can keep me on the path and humble and conversational, so that I don't get, we can get lost sometimes. So it's always really good to have your hands being held on either side by people you care about, who are going to keep you on this earth in a good way, full of joy, and remind you when you're feeling sad to be joyful. I don't know. It's good work. It's good work. And I am unbelievably privileged and grateful to be able to do this work right now.
How do you see some churches or faith communities engaged in that work? Like we've talked about our personal processes and practices there. Do you see some creative ways that the faith community at large is making a difference?
So many faith communities are actually doing this better than Methodists. So we've got, and globally, there's a better understanding among people of faith that this is a problem, because we've been kind of insulated. So they have had the personal experience that we haven't necessarily had. I think in Methodism, we're seeing the fruit of many people over many years who really, really wanted to have this conversation, really felt the urgency of this conversation, people like Reverend Pat Watkins. So the Earth Keepers program got started in 2016. Reverend Jenny Phillips was one of the people that brought that together with Reverend Pat Watkins, and also Reverend Jonathan Brake is now working with Earth Keepers. We have the United Methodist Women, who are now the United Women in Faith, who always have my heart and appreciation and awe. They are amazing and wonderful. So we have groups within United Methodism that have spoken out. Young people, when they stay with us, speak out. And I want to encourage young people to participate in this, to help if it's a cranky religious uncle, especially, we need your help, right? Because this is really important work. It's your future. You get a say. And it's always been that young people teach the older people. So that's just part of it. So So I've seen that work, and there is now something called the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement that came out of a series of summits over a number of years. But it is online, and again, the pandemic kind of blew the doors off of this, because suddenly you didn't have to travel to a particular state somewhere to talk to the people who could also manage to travel. Now you could talk to everybody who cared, everybody who's interested, everybody. And we've got a worship committee, and we've got an annual conference committee, and they've created model resolutions for your annual conference. Model resolution I put together actually says that part of the resolution that it is the youth and young adults of the annual conference who will pick the task force at the annual conference level to ensure there is a budget and a strategy for addressing net zero within the church. So I think we got to honor young people in a way that we haven't been, and give them a real voice. But anyway, that's my 2 cents again. Sorry, I digress.
Yeah, it's good.
But yeah, so so there's really good work being done. Some churches have creation care at the center of what they do and have really been successful, but many people struggle. There is a story I heard from a United Methodist in the Southeast. And they had tried really hard to get a particular program going. I don't want to say the program because I don't want to give this person away. But it had been something low level like recycling within the church. And they worked on it. There were some roadblocks, but they got those roadblocks out of the way. They got funding for it, the whole 9 yards. And then the pastor said, well, I think we're just not going to do it. And she was really heartbroken. And she said to me, I should speak up, but I am afraid. And I said, can I quote you? Can I tell that story? Because we need to hear it. This is actually a shared experience by many people in our churches and clergy as well. So our conference staffs are not staffed with people who have undertaken training, who have specialty in climate, in net zero, because there's lots of specialties that the church needs, right? So we're not going to say one thing is bad or one thing is good, but we are going to say that in this time of urgency, where the gospel work in front of us is to restore creation, that we should probably have folks at the conference level who deeply understand this, who have 10,000 hours in this work, and can build the kind of coalitions and open themselves to the kinds of conversations that we're really going to need in order to move our churches into a place of resilience, because our churches are in it, right? Some of us are in flood zones. Some of us are over pipelines. I mean, what? And they're stuffing those pipelines full, like trying to get more pressure into them. Or if it leaks near you, I mean, let's not give people that. Let's move into a sustainable. We can do that and have a lovely life. That's the other thing too. We can do it. We can create resilience at the local church level. It's a passion of mine. That's something we just have to do because people are good and lovely and wonderful. And if we can just get to them, if we can just have these conversations, be Wesleyan, circle up, have a conversation about climate, you will discover that people in every church, even grouchy uncle, cranky uncle churches, they want a good life too. They want good life for their kids. They miss the days where things were a little bit more peaceful, and you didn't have to worry about poison plastics being poured into your water source. They want that. And so it's a matter of brainstorming and talking together about how to bring that about.
So as we wrap up, where can we get more information and more education, if you will?
Oh, gosh. So I just signed up for the newest Climate Reality Project training, even though I've taken it and been a mentor and everything, because they're going to talk about the IRA and the funding that's coming. Partly they're going to talk about it, the funding that's going to be coming down to help fund resilience and adaptation work at the local level. So you may need to dig new wells. You may need to dig furrows to collect groundwater. You may need to work with foresters to forests in your area. There's all sorts of things you may need to do. And as a local church, being open for disasters, you might want to upgrade your kitchen to be a commercial kitchen so that when the flood comes, which you know it came last year and it came the year before, your church is open to serve people in need and to have conversations that are important. And So those are things that churches, solar and batteries, like in my area, those wires that get strung across the forest, those cause forest fires. So you lose power, you lose everything, and then you have people who can't refrigerate their medicines. You can't, I hope you have. I mean, it diminishes what you have to live with. So solar and batteries gives a sanctuary. What is sanctuary? True sanctuary space in the community when there is an emergency. And churches can be equipped for that and be ready for that. And they love to do that kind of work. They care about people in their community. So I would say you can go to Faiths for Future. So that's just all one word with a numeral 4 in the middle. And it's got articles at the intersection of, and video from past conversations at the intersection of faith and climate justice, creation justice. I would also say go to the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement's website. Lots of information there. So that's umcreationjustice.org. Those are your two starting places. And you will find support at the umcreationjustice.org. And if you want to have conversations with your church or something like that, you reach out to me. You can find me at Richenda, which I guess you can see my name spelled there, Richenda, at circlefaithfuture, all one word, .org. And I'd be happy to talk with you as well. This is really good work. And do not be dismayed, for God has laid a path of brightness that shines even from God's own glory, that leads us to the fresh water and the orchards. And all we need to get there is the willingness to do it and the faith to believe it is possible.
All right, we have been fairly disrupted by looking at our spiritual call to care for the climate.
Thanks for talking with us. The Compass Podcast is brought to you by United Methodist Communication. If podcast is meaningful for you, check out some of our other episodes.
Finding the Divine in Nature with Victoria Lours is a great follow-up to this one. And also, I think another good one would be Believing You Can Make a Difference. That was with Lindsay Crinks. It's good motivation for taking on some big action items too. And I'm butchering this. Can we do this one again?
Yeah.
Okay. I butchered the other one too, but I think in a forgivable way. All right. Let's start again. And 3, 2. All right. We have been disrupted by looking at our spiritual call to care for the climate.
Thanks for talking with us. The Compass Podcast is brought to you by United Methodist Communication. If Compass...
And again. 3, 2. All right. We have been disrupted by looking at our spiritual call to care for the environment.
Thanks for talking with us. The Compass Podcast is brought to you by United Methodist Communication. If Compass is meaningful for you, check out some of our other episodes.
Finding the Divine in Nature with Victoria Lours is a great follow-up to this one. Also, another good one, I think, is Believing You Can Make a Difference with Lindsay Crinks. It's just good motivation for taking on some big action items as well. And while you're listening, please leave a rating and or review.
Compass comes out every other Wednesday unless we are interrupted by a holiday, in which case we'll hit your feed the following week. But we'll be back online within 2 weeks' time in this case. Chat with you then. Peace.
Bye.